Hello everyone, Francesca here. Today we're talking about something that many parents hear almost daily, the phrase, I don't know. For a lot of parents, this phrase can feel incredibly frustrating. It can sound dismissive, like a refusal to think, or even like a lack of effort. But today I want to gently shift the way we interpret that moment. Because very often, when a teen says, I don't know, what we're seeing isn't laziness at all. What we're seeing is a stuck brain. And once you understand why that happens, you can respond in ways that unlock thinking instead of accidentally shutting it down. I don't know, just 3 words, but they can be one of the most triggering phrases for parents. You ask a question about homework, you ask what they think about the topic, you ask them to explain their answer, and you hear, I don't know. It can feel like the conversation hits a wall, but here's the important thing. Very often, this response isn't resistance, it's a signal that something in the thinking process has stalled. From the outside, I don't know can easily look like things like avoidance, disengagement, refusal, or a lack of effort. And understandably, that's how many adults interpret it. But inside the brain of the teen, something very different might be happening. Instead of laziness, it might be cognitive overload, or uncertainty about the question, or difficulty accessing what they actually know. So, today we're going to look at a few of the reasons that moment can happen. Let's start with something most people don't realise. Many questions we ask teens are actually very cognitively demanding. Even simple questions can require a lot of mental processing. For example, a question might require inference, pattern recognition, working memory, and verbal reasoning all happening at the same time. If the thinking load becomes bigger than the brain's capacity in that moment, the brain stalls. And when that happens, the quickest protective response is I don't know. Not because nothing is there, but because the brain can't assemble the answer fast enough. Another common issue is something called a retrieval bottleneck. Sometimes teens genuinely do know the answer, but they can't access it under pressure. Stress changes how memory works, and when someone feels pressure to answer quickly, the brain's retrieval systems can slow down. Think of it like trying to open a drawer that suddenly sticks. The information may still be inside, but the brain temporarily can't reach it. And when that happens, I don't know becomes the easiest way to respond. Another challenge some teens experience is what we call an expression gap. This means they understand something internally, but they struggle to express it externally. You might see this particularly with students who process information visually, think in pictures, or need more time to form language. Inside their mind, the idea may actually be quite clear, but translating that idea into words feels overwhelming. And when that gap feels too big, the brain protects itself again with the phrase, I don't know. Because saying I don't know feels safer than attempting an answer that might come out messy. There's another emotional layer that sometimes sits underneath this response, fear. Many teens have experienced repeated correction, or very high expectations, or situations where they answered incorrectly and felt embarrassed. Over time, the brain learns something very quickly. Silence is safer than risk. So instead of offering a guess or an imperfect answer, they default to I don't know, not because they refuse to think, but because their brain has learned that not answering feels safer than answering wrong. So here's a helpful reframe. Instead of thinking they won't think, try shifting to they're stuck at a step in the thinking process. That tiny shift changes everything because now we're not dealing with attitude, we're dealing with a problem in the thinking pathway. And once you see that, your role becomes helping them move to the next step. It's a lot easier. There are actually several different points where a student might get stuck. For example, they might be struggling with understanding the question, breaking the question down, accessing prior knowledge, finding the right words, or organising their thoughts into a clear answer. Any one of those steps can stall the process, and when it does, the brain often compresses the experience into the simplest response possible. I don't know. Something else that's important to understand is how pressure changes brain performance. When pressure rises, 3 things tend to happen. processing speed drops, memory retrieval weakens, and language becomes harder to access. So if a teen already feels unsure and the environment becomes tense or rushed, the brain actually loses access to the very thinking we want. This is why tone often matters more than the question itself. A calm tone keeps the thinking system open. A pressured tone can close it. So, what can you actually do in that moment? The first step is simple: pause. When you hear I don't know, resist the urge to immediately push harder. Instead, pause, lower your tone, give the brain a moment to reset. Often, just reducing the pressure slightly allows thinking to restart. You can also try shifting the type of question you ask. Instead of pushing for a full answer, try smaller prompts like, what's one small part you do know? Are you unsure what the question is asking? Want to break it into two pieces? Or even simply, do you want a minute to think? These kinds of prompts lower the pressure and help the brain re engage with the thinking process. These small changes do several powerful things. They reduce threat, they invite thinking instead of demanding it, and they model collaboration rather than correction. And over time, they help teens build confidence in their thinking. Because instead of feeling exposed when they're unsure, they feel supported while figuring things out. For this week, I want to invite you into a small observation exercise. Notice when the phrase I don't know shows up at home. And instead of reacting immediately, just get curious. What happened right before that moment? Was the question complex? Was the environment rushed? Was your teen already tired or stressed? Observation is often the first step to understanding what the brain needs. And finally, here's a reflection question for you. Where are you hearing I don't know most right now? Is it during homework, conversations about school, or when you ask for explanations? You're not alone in this. And with a few small shifts, these moments can become opportunities for thinking to grow rather than the points of frustration. If you're looking for a few practical tools that help teens organise their thinking and get started with writing, I've linked a few resources below that many parents find really helpful. And if this video was helpful, feel free to subscribe for more practical strategies for supporting neurodivergent teens with school and learning.